Hey, Feisty listeners, Feisty founder and CEO Sara Gross here. I am super excited to let you all know that our brand new suite of digital courses is officially live and on demand starting June 9th. And these courses are designed for one purpose: to give active women like you the tools, knowledge, and support you actually need to thrive. For far too long, women's health has been treated like an afterthought. But not here, not anymore. Whether you're dialing in your nutrition, building strength, navigating hormonal shifts, or just trying to stay sharp and feel like yourself, you'll find expert-led, science-backed courses built for real life and real bodies. And to celebrate this launch, you will get 25% off all courses through the end of June. Check them out now at livefeisty.com. The link will be in the show notes, because your health deserves more. Hi, Selene.
Hey, Sara.
How are you doing today?
I am doing pretty well. Can't complain. Yourself?
Yeah, so pretty good, pretty good. Today we're doing something a little bit different than we normally do. So I just wanted to give a shout out before we start to everyone listening from the Girls Gone Gravel community, from Hit Play Not Pause, from our triathlon community, and also from Women's Performance. This recording that we're doing is going out across all of our feeds.
All right. This is a first.
It is a first. I'm sure all of you know Selene, but in case there's someone who does not, she is the amazing host of the Hit Play Not Pause podcast. She's also spent 30 years as a writer in the fitness space. She knows her shit. She's a secret, not so secret science geek. So I always love talking to Selene. So it's a fun day.
And I think I've been on all the shows at this point. So
yeah,
good,
sure.
Good to be here.
So we're taking a little bit of a look under the hood today at Feisty Media just broadly. So I think we're going to take a look at some of the things that we have coming up. We're going to talk a little bit about how we think about education, because we've really been leaning into like really helping our audience who want to know more about their health and better optimize, even though I hate that word because it's kind of been taken over by podcasting bros, but who really want to get the best out of their lives and live the most active, healthy lives they can. So we're going to talk about how we think about that and the things that we're doing.
Outstanding. And it's,
excellent.
We've been here a while doing this, going on 5 years of Hit Play Not Pause, which is frankly unbelievable.
That is wild. I think it's like 5 that feels like 3. If it seems wild to me, it must seem crazy to you.
Crazy. Yeah.
And 8 years for Feisty Media, just in general, and we were sort of talking before the show. And when I first started Feisty, I really was thinking more about women's sports and how we needed to, in particular, like I came from triathlon, thinking about how we cover the pro women in triathlon and then branching out to cycling and other sports and telling their stories. And then we really started to see the need for more health content, I guess. Like, I think it was like a lot of that had to do with the response of our audience. So whenever we had someone on that was a nutritionist, dietitian, exercise scientist, we would get a huge response from our audience. Like really a lot of women wanted more information about health and performance. And we realized like this was a big need. And I think we saw that especially when we launched Hit Play Not Pause, right?
Well, yeah, and that makes a whole lot of sense because you stepped into the endurance sport space. It's not like, even though we talk about soccer and basketball and hockey and some of those more spectator-oriented sports now, those other sports are participatory. So the people who are listening are also often mostly participating. And so they are invested in their own performance and their own health in a way that your average NFL football watcher is not. It's just it's a very different relationship with the sport and with the audience. So it makes 100% sense.
Right. Totally. And I've been finding that also applies kind of across a women's sports audience too. Like we've been attending more, say, soccer games or WNBA games and stuff like that. And the audience looks completely different to men's sports, who, like you mentioned, the NFL, for example, right? Like they're not drinking beer, tailgating outside before, which like power to them. That's such a fun community thing to do. But like, you know, you have a lot of families. It's just like a lot of like, you know, older women who have clearly played sport throughout their lives as well. Like you can see it. The vibe is different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So when we first started Perimenopause 5 years ago, what was kind of the general state of, you know, women's knowledge about menopause? Like, where were we at then?
Very low. It's hard to even believe at this point how nascent it was. And in some ways, I feel like the conversation has super changed. I mean, it's on Oprah now, it's in the Wall Street Journal, it's in the New York Times. Though when I go out and talk to the broader community, as I often do, there's a lag still that I feel like everybody knows this because it's everywhere, but it still hasn't bled out into the whole culture like in my mind it has, because I'm swimming in this water every day, all day. But back then, I mean, even saying the word menopause, some people still didn't even want to say the word menopause. I mean, it was really, really in the infancy of getting out into the mainstream, and people knew very, very little about it in general, and active women knew far, far less, because people still didn't fully understand or understand at all how estrogen influenced so many aspects of their lives outside of their reproductive health. And that conversation has exploded exponentially. It's hard to even wrap your head around how much that conversation has grown.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I find that in like other aspects of women's health too. Like when I think about even the way I changed the way I looked at my career, like retrospectively, like as a professional athlete, like there are things that we now talk about and know, like about LEA and Red S. In particular, for those who don't know what that is, like kind of the effects of under eating, whether that's intentionally or not. If you're not fueled well, there's all kinds of side effects to that, like essentially our bodies kind of shut down, you know? And in different ways for different women. So it's really difficult to track. So that's a conversation that's changed, again, on that same type of timeline, like over the last 4 or 5 years, where suddenly we're like, oh, we're all very well aware of that. And things like that, I was literally told to underfuel.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Everybody was.
Yeah.
The men's sports too. That's not just women, even though women often suffer more severe consequences because of our reproductive elements there, that we really do, you know, bone health and all that suffers even more. But I mean, you see that I was at Bicycling for 27 years riding for them, and now they're shoveling down 800 calories of carbs an hour. It's not like some ridiculous amounts when it was a badge of honor to go out with just water, you know, and nothing on a 3-hour ride. I mean, you just wouldn't do that now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. The times I would go running for 3 hours in the Swiss Alps with a handful of jelly beans. First thing in the morning without eating anything at all beforehand.
That was what you did. That was what you were supposed to do.
Like trying not to collapse in the shower, right? Like afterwards. Yeah, it's a thing. So I think there's a lot of those types of conversations that like, and there's also a lot of new research.
Oh yeah.
Right? So
the hormone therapy conversation has people are still a bit afraid of it, but now you have more people afraid not to take it. I mean, the whole conversation has changed.
Yeah, and it's I'd love to know from you too, because I've heard you talk about it many times before too, but like how has that conversation changed, and what are some of the pitfalls, or what are some of the good and bad things about how the conversation's changed?
It's so challenging now because you have a lot of players in the arena, right? You have the medical societies who have sort of been there all the time and tend to be more conservative, and you have a lot of influencers, some more reliable than others. You have people pushing the conversation in ways that I think are necessary, but still on the edge of maybe science-backed. So there's just a lot going on, and it's nearly impossible to know, unless you spend all your day, every day in it, to know what to think of it. as a just
Yeah.
an, as a regular person. And I see this all the time. A lot of women's everyday doctors, those doctors still haven't caught up to the conversation. So they're 10 years back,
Right.
truly. And the inserts in hormone therapy still have the black box, even for vaginal estrogen, which makes no sense. And people have been agitating to change that. So you get this thing that people have told you is safe, or you'll turn to dust if you don't use, and you open the insert and it tells you it's going to kill you. And everybody is just like, what is happening? It's
Right.
so, everybody is not on the same page, and they may never be. But it is really, really, you'll hear, if you get into the Instagram space, you'll hear contradictory information from every angle, from very, very reputable people often. And that's what makes it even more challenging.
So, okay, unpack that a little bit for me too, because I think we see this not just in the menopause space, but
For
also
sure.
I'm thinking about the general training, this cycle syncing conversation. Like, should we be training with our cycles? And then you have people on both sides arguing for different things. Or so, how is it that experts that we know and maybe have previously trusted are basically interpreting data in two different ways? Like,
Because
how does that happen?
I can tell you easily how it happened.
Great.
I have been a writer, a health science writer, since 1992. And I have watched all hundreds and hundreds of experts in weight loss, in nutrition, in muscle building, in exercise science, in nutrition, fight over the same body of research for 30 years, because that's what research is. You have this body of research where I can go in and make a case for something with okay research or decent research or very good research. And somebody else can go and look at the same body of research and pull, and some people call this cherry picking, and I don't always think that's fair. Some people do cherry pick, but some of it is just two stacks of evidence. And it's people then use their own experience and their anecdotal experience and their own bias and all of the things, and they make their case for it. And I always, in my career, just would be like, well, there's many ways up the mountain. We're not test tubes. So you are always going to have things that work for some groups and not for others. That's always going to be the case. So I think of it as, what do I see in our community? What does our specific active community need? Because the research isn't always done on women who are active. Most of the time it isn't. Finding stuff that, is more applicable to the audience. All of those things, but that's what you see, and even in the case of something like cycle syncing, which I think that was an idea that got taken too far, in my opinion. We do see, and it's a disservice, in my opinion, again, to just completely quote unquote debunk some things or say that's trash or pseudoscience, because there is a kernel of something very important in there. That is why it started, is that our cycles do affect us. PMS does affect us. You still have professional athletes begging for answers because they're struggling in the most important meets of the competitions of their life, and they're so frustrated because we're still so far behind in understanding this. So I don't think the fighting often serves us, as opposed to saying, wow, there is something here. We cannot broad brush for everybody, but everybody wants that. And that's on the consumer wants that too. They're just like, tell me. And if somebody confidently tells them, then it's easier than trying to say, well, it depends, and you have to trial and error. But honestly, a lot of times you have to kind of trial and error. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how we get here.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And I can see why, just again, talking about cycle syncing, I can see why it landed well with some people, finally an answer, because it was kind of finally someone's acknowledging that I have a week or a few days every month or something where I feel off. Right. And I'm allowed to sync my training or my life or whatever with that. And you're still allowed that. It just doesn't mean that cycle syncing's for everyone.
Totally. And it's if you look at the general population, most people don't periodize at all. Athletes do.
Right.
People who are right. So
Mm-hmm.
if you go from what the general population, and this is not a knock, it's just of course that's what they do. You know, they're not thinking in a way of loading, deloading, override, all of that stuff. They don't do that by nature. And you apply a structure on it that gives them those days that they're working on easier stuff, mobility, whatever. They're going to get benefits just because they're doing structured training.
Right. So funny. I feel like I'm exactly in that category. Like, because I just like exercise for fun and randomly and like
most people
jump
do.
in classes and don't know what time I'm going any day and just do stuff. And then like actually had this experience just this week where I ended up, I had to take 2 days off because of any exercise because I was busy basically. And then on like the third day when I went back, I like PR'd a couple
I feel
lifts.
bionic.
I was
it's
just
like
like,
because I actually gave myself a rest.
I'm on fire. Yeah. And then I realized like, oh, prior to that, I had not taken a day off in like 12 days. Or like one day that I considered a day off, I'd gone on like a 5-hour hike. Like
Happens all the time.
It's like, oh, right. So yeah, if I really did want to invest in myself and improve in some of these things, it should probably be structured.
And if you cycle sync, there would be an automatic structure.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's so interesting. So I think the question then is like we're talking about all this information and experts who are translating it differently. How do you then, or how do we as Feisty, like how do we vet the experts that we're bringing in, whether that's for a podcast or an online course, and how do you personally vet that information and deliver it in a way that you feel is, I don't know, the most reasonable or the most, like, I want to say the most true, but that's like, but then we're like, what is truth? You know, but that gives the best, ends up with the best advice for the most number of people.
Well, I look, there's a number of filters that everything goes through. I obviously look at credentials, where they've come from, what they've studied, their background. I very much try to always find people who have deep experience with active women, just because we're such a minority. Most people, the vast majority of people, do not exercise on purpose. And most of the studies are done on them. So it's very important to have the experience with active people. And I prioritize that. And there's things that I look for that would be red flags, whether it's overstating a little bit of something or making too many sure thing promises, like the absolutes I kind of worry about a little bit. So I have my own bit of a litmus test, but it's hard. It's not like I have it written down. You know what I mean? It's just sort of years and years and years of experience of talking to people and knowing the body of research that they're pulling from and looking at that.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's also what would you call it? There's a way of presenting information, right? That's like kind of maybe less absolute than some people want to, or then sometimes gets traction on Instagram, for example, right?
Well, absolute always. That's why the podcast bros do so well. That's why Huberman does so well. He is going to tell you to look at the sun for 20 minutes. And, he gives you very exact protocols. And he's got a book coming out called Protocols. People love protocols. And I get it. I totally get it. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily harmful. I personally, though, see that when it is presented exactly like that, then people, if they can't do it exactly like that, they don't do anything. Like, that is the dichotomy that you'll see. And I want to avoid that. So I always try to describe things as guidelines, truly guidelines. Like, and the guidelines are not narrow. It's got some space, and you really just want to sort of stay between the bumpers, kind of like you're bowling with the bumpers up. Like, the ball is going to swerve a little bit, but you just don't want it to go into the gutter. That's fine. But there's room.
I love that. It's like, that's a great way of thinking about it. Instead of, it's guidelines as opposed to protocols. Yeah. Right. Like, it's funny you mentioned Huberman and the light thing, because as someone with like those blue eyes that are like extremely painful to be outside without sunglasses on, I like What? And I see people ask that question all the time on his posts about that stuff. Like, what about? And I honestly, I can't even remember what the answer is because I feel like it was so
I don't
unsatisfying.
know.
Like, it's like I can. There's no way I can stand outside with my eyes open in the bright sunlight for 20 minutes. I cannot. So pretty funny. Yeah, I love it. Guidelines. And so then, yeah. So at Feisty, we saw kind of this need to create guidelines. So to create content that provides something valuable that is a guideline, right? But and not too like we just talked about. What's that?
A blueprint, if you will.
Yeah, a blueprint. I love that. Or like I think we've called it like a roadmap before and stuff like that.
The metaphors are leading.
Oh, we
could go.
And so we started doing that by creating online courses.
Yeah.
Right? What is it about how we put together our courses that you think is in particular helpful or more helpful, say, than some of the things we've been talking about?
I think the differentiation in how we put together our courses that is valuable is it always starts with the how we got here, why we're confused, and putting it in the larger context so people are grounded to begin with. It sort of level sets folks as to why do I need this course? Why am I so confused? Why do I think this way? It always puts it in context. Say, menopause does that, fuel does that, so they all do. And then your mind is a bit more open at that point because you understand this is why I'm so confused. This is why I feel the way I do about whatever it is. And then there's a systematic approach to, this is the problem. This is why you're confused. Often then we will talk about how to adjust your mindset or how to work with your own mindset to be best receptive to the material you're going to, so you're not overwhelmed, because one of the things that can happen is you get to a course and now you're like, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed. So we're always trying not to overwhelm people, just like digestible bits of information in an arc that makes sense, that sort of tells a story and takes you through the process. So when you get to the end, you can draw a lot of your own conclusions and your own plans of action. That is a living document that then you can, as you go forward, see what works, that trial and error part, see what maybe doesn't work so much, and continue to evolve with yourself as you go forward.
Yeah, I love that. I'm such a teach a woman to fish kind of person. I'm also, and for myself too, I feel like I can make the best decisions for my life and health or in my parenting or in any realm if I have some understanding of why I'm making those decisions. It's not just someone told me to go outside in the morning, but it's actually understanding that without it being too complicated, right? So I know that, say, okay, we're releasing a new course on brain health called Brain Power, right? We worked with a couple neuroscientists on parts of that course where their understanding of this is so deep and in the weeds, and I don't need to know all of that. Right? It needs to be digestible, but I do want to understand something about how the brain works, so that if I have a decision, if I hear what seems like contradicting information, I have something to fall back on to go, well, wait, I know a little bit about this and can make a decision of maybe a couple things to try for me to see if they'll work. So definitely I feel in a lot of the ways that we've put together the courses, it's been, okay, here's some background information on all of these things so that you can make your own plan, right? So that, I think that stands for Fueled, which was our first course about nutrition, and then for Strong, which was, we saw a lot of women being confused about, in particular, about strength training and where to start, and what do you mean by lift heavy or these types of things. So just all of that stuff. And then, of course, the amazing Navigate Menopause course that you helped put together that does the same thing. It helps you build a roadmap for menopause.
Yeah, and takes you through, because with that, you may not even know that what you're experiencing is perimenopause or menopause. So there's a lot of education that goes in that. Like, I didn't know anxiety, I didn't know fear, I didn't know all those things were part of a hormonal journey, so to speak. So the usefulness of that course in particular is also that education piece of just saying, here is a checklist for you. You might have some big aha moments in here as you go through it, saying, that's a symptom, that's a symptom. A lot of people would not otherwise know that. So there's a big utility of that.
Yeah, and we have 3 new courses coming out. I already mentioned the brain power one, but one of them is a perimenopause starter pack type thing. So that takes you through all of the symptoms, and that, like, I find for me that was very helpful because we started doing menopause content before I had any symptoms, right? So for me, it's like an interesting, even though now, you know, like I have an estrogen patch now, and I have an IUD for a bit of progesterone, but like actually knowing, even though I know all of the symptoms and I've learned a ton about menopause, it's even still hard for me to describe the change that I feel with that estrogen patch. Like I just feel better, right? But it's made me feel like that's okay. Like there's all of these symptoms, I understand them, and that like I don't necessarily need to itemize which symptom it's helping with, right? Like I just know I feel generally better, I'm sleeping better, I'm working out better, things are better, and that's okay.
One of the biggest symptoms of perimenopause is not feeling like yourself. Like, it's literally a documented, studied symptom. So you don't have to say honestly any more than that. That is actually a well-researched symptom of that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's like a big reason why I think we were putting together this perimenopause starter pack, because it's different for everybody, right? And then the big one I'm excited about is the HRT course with Carla. Again, it's kind of a micro course compared to some of the other bigger courses, but we get so many questions about hormone replacement.
Yeah, that's going to be that merited. I covered it in a very high level in the perimenopause starter pack, but that merited a course of its own because it is so very confusing, because there are so many forms and formulations and doses, and testosterone has entered the chat, and what does it all mean? How do you even start? And it's nearly impossible for many women to have a conversation with their healthcare provider without their own base of knowledge. And that's a shame, but it's true. To be able to come in and know what exists, what it does, what you might want, all of that will make your healthcare experience exponentially better.
Yeah. And that's been exactly true to my experience. Like, I feel like I've been able to hack healthcare a little bit because it's almost like I have enough information to know what I want to do or what I would like to try next. So I can align what I'm telling my doctor with that, which has been super, super helpful. So I think anybody would benefit from either of those mini courses too. And then, like I said, the brain power course, which it's kind of a bit of my baby too, because I feel like we spend a lot of time thinking and talking about our physical health, bone health, our muscles, we're lifting, we're eating well, you know, and that I didn't know hardly anything about brain health. And really, I think as we age, it's like actually keeping our minds. I think part of this partially comes from me forgetting words sometimes and thinking, oh my God, what's happening? Which you could probably already notice even on this podcast. So just even having resources to understand that was really important to me. So on June 9th, we have a very exciting announcement. All of our courses are going on sale on demand, which means that you can buy them anytime. And we're also kicking it off with a big sale. So everyone will get an email about that if you're on our email list. So definitely make sure you're on the email list by June 9th so you get access to those discounts. What else? What does that mean? Like, what is on demand?
I was going to just say we should probably explain that, because previously, aside from these newer courses, the courses have always been only available within a window, and they were quote unquote cohort models, which I didn't even know what that meant when I started here. I was like, what does that even mean, a cohort model? But basically it means you all start together and it's like being in a virtual class almost for like 8 weeks. And that there's really nice things that happen with that, but there are more limitations because you have to be available when those classes are happening, and it just drips out week by week, and if you miss something you feel behind. It you can't get it. If I want it in March, well, too bad, it started in January. So I think there's just more issues with that this solves.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people have really benefited from the cohort model that we've done in the past. Like, I think we've seen communities of people come together, people like learning together. And we're still going to offer those, but you can still buy a course and have access to it anytime, which I think is huge for a lot of people. And then coming up this year, we also have, we're also doing a lot of strength training retreats that we'll be launching. We've got our gravel mechanic camp, which I think is actually sold out, but will be happening again next year. Recently, you went on a trip to Girona with a group of gravel cyclists. Yeah, sounds like it was amazing.
Out of this world. And lives literally were changed. I mean, the idea was to offer women in midlife a chance to breathe, be together, ride bikes in a beautiful place, and just take a week to process life and what they want and work through. And some things were about menopause. Not everything was about menopause, but it was frankly it was amazing. It exceeded, I think, everybody's expectation, because there were people who had just lost their mom, or their business had just gone under, or they were really struggling with symptoms, or they had been through all of this stuff, and they just didn't have other people, let alone this group of supported, like-minded people to just break bread with, literally over dinner, and just talk all this stuff out. And we had, by the end of the week, they were signing up for events with each other.
Nice. They were strangers at the beginning of the week, and they were signing up for things together. Nice.
They were signing up to do events together. One woman, it's still my favorite story. She saw that non-riders were welcome, and by that we meant we could accommodate a spouse or something if you really wanted to come. And she thought that meant, oh, I'm not much of a cyclist, that means me. And the riding was quite challenging. They were big mountains. You're in Spain. And she was great. A little over her head here and there, but always with a smile and super happy. And by the end of it, she asked, do you think I could do Big Sugar? She's from Arkansas, and it's this Arkansas event. And I said, absolutely, positively. But what you just did. So another woman, I just got a WhatsApp from her. She got second in her time trial. She's going to Worlds. I can't say enough about it. Magic happens when we all get together.
I know. It seems like that all of our events, at least all the ones I've been to, I have that same experience of like, it's life-changing, both mostly in the community and who you meet, who you talk to, but also in like the things that we learn together, we experience together, or just finding like other like-minded people.
How many of those women from those business accelerators or Outspoken or any of them, they're still helping each other out and still in contact.
Yeah, and I hear from them all the time too, like the same thing. Like we had like the chat group before, or people will come to me occasionally, I love it, with like their unique business problem that they think I might be able to speak to. And I love, if my experience as a business owner can help them, that's like, that's really the best. So exciting times here at Feisty. So excited to get all of these courses on demand, and just really wanted to give our entire audience the heads up on all of that. So everyone sees it coming. They know come June 9th, you can get access to all of our courses at a cheaper price point, and at a discount. So really excited to like keep educating people, vetting the experts, bringing new people in. We have a whole like we have a whole list. Actually, someone said to me the other day, like, do we keep a list of the experts? And I was like, that would have been a great idea to start 5 years ago. Because we literally have been, we have our regulars, like
Yeah.
Erin Ayala, the sports psychologist, or Carla, our endocrinologist. But then there are some others who really we've met and have like floated into the Feisty world, who have created some great content for a module or two on the courses. That it's, I think, one of our biggest strengths is the access to those experts, and then also having people like yourself in our community who can translate the information, and Linda too, who builds all of the courses and deals with the cohorts. She's also very good at translating some of the information to be useful for us.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear we're still going to go through with some cohort classes, because there is magic that happens, like we were saying, when we all get together. There's definitely, I've sat in on nearly all of the sessions for Navigate Menopause, and a lot of women, and there's a lot of crying, there's a lot of laughing, there's a lot of bonding. I mean, it becomes very real. It's pretty special.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we definitely want to keep that element, and so anyone who buys a course on demand will get an email when we're doing the cohort and can choose to join that as well. Excellent. So that is also happening. Cool. Well, thank you, Selene. This has been fun. I feel like we should do this more often, but
next time.
Yeah, next time. Cool. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you all soon.